Today, food production contributes to more than 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions and covers more than 40% of ice and desert-free lands. Proteins are especially resource-intensive to produce, and if current trends continue, the world will demand 30 to 50% more protein. Something needs to change, and our scientists are working on multiple routes to enable this change, focusing on redesigning production systems, technology, and consumption shifts.
Hi, welcome. You might be wondering why our game is specifically focused on proteins, so let me explain.
Of all our macronutrients, proteins have the highest footprint to produce. They contribute significantly to greenhouse gases and also to land use worldwide. If we want to work toward a sustainable food system, we think we need to change the way we produce and consume our proteins. Proteins are an important macronutrient. They help our bodies grow and make muscle. Unfortunately, the availability of proteins worldwide is not balanced. We see in wealthy countries an oversupply and overconsumption of proteins, and in particular, a high consumption of animal source proteins, while in other parts of the world, there's a total protein scarcity.
That's why we are working toward fair and sustainable protein systems worldwide. Our goal is to ensure there are sufficient, nutritious, delicious, and sustainable proteins for everyone. Now I have a question for you.
Do you think this statement is true or false? We have enough protein to feed the projected world population of 9 billion people.
There is enough protein to feed 9 billion people, but food is not shared equitably. In fact, there's a linear correlation between a country's income and its meat consumption. If that trend continues, the world will demand at least 50% more protein by 2050, largely because of animal feed for meat production. We can avoid that by shifting to a more plant-based diet.
Buongiorno! Have a look around you. You will see fields cultivated with open field crops such as maize, potatoes, sugar beet, onions, wheat, all crops that are very common in a typical Dutch rotation.
All a crop needs to grow is sun, carbon dioxide and nutrients. If only one element is missing, the growth and by that also the production of proteins will be limited. We call this the law of the minimum.
Fertilizers ensure that the plant have enough nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus or potassium by complementing the natural stocks present in the soil.
The use of synthetic fertilizer, together with mechanization and breeding, was the foundation of the tremendous yield increments observed during the Green Revolution after World War II.
Nowadays, precision agriculture represents a new revolution in the agricultural technology.
Precision agriculture aims not only at boosting the yield, but rather at ensuring that resources are efficiently allocated by varying the application rate of inputs, such as fertilizer, water or pesticides, based on the different needs of the different parts of the field. What strategy for fertilization reflects best the precision agriculture approach for fertilization?
Too much fertilization leads to nitrogen runoff and algae clogging the waterways. Too little and the plants don't grow. Precision agriculture helps us to deliver the right amount of fertilization wherever and whenever it's needed.
We are here in the lab where we do a lot of research on different crops, and one of them is potato. When we think about proteins, we don't think immediately about potato. However, potato is an interesting source of proteins. Let me explain you. It's true that potato has only 1 to 2% of protein, but we can grow potatoes incredibly efficiently. So when we calculate the protein yield per hectare, it works out to be pretty surprisingly efficient. However, it is important to use the whole crop. Potato starch is a common food ingredient, but there are also other interesting ways to use the leftovers in non-food applications. This is what we are researching here at Wageningen. And now I have a question for you. Which of the following items is already sometimes made from potato peels?
For a long time, potatoes were cultivated mainly as a source of starch, but their protein is just as valuable. All of the residues can be used. Potato peels are sometimes used to make chipboard. So you might already have some potato-based furniture at home.
Did you know that we're looking into the possibilities to produce milk without a cow? Actually, scientists at Wageningen University, like myself, are using yeasts and bacteria to produce dairy-identical proteins. The technology is fairly simple. What we do is we place a snippet of cow-identical DNA into a yeast or a bacteria, and they start to produce the proteins. Right now, it's still an expensive and challenging process. For example, extracting the proteins. Also, when you have these proteins, you cannot immediately make a cheese because they do not have the same structure as in cheese. That results in a very expensive glass of milk. Here in Europe, the technology is not approved yet by the Food Safety Authority. So it's possible that the yeast-based milk will become available in other parts of the world first. A lot of food ingredients are already made using microorganisms. Can you say which of these foods isn't made that way?
Aromas, enzymes, and compounds called peptides are already commonly made by bacteria and yeasts. It's a cost-effective and sustainable way to produce food ingredients.
Insects are everywhere around you. They are important for our ecosystems, for the pollination of many of our crops, and they are a rich protein source to feed animals with. Here at the Laboratory of Entomology, insects as food and feed is one of our main research topics, in which black soldier flies play a prominent role. One of the aspects we study is how to grow the larvae on different substrates, as black soldier fly larvae are capable to convert waste streams into higher quality proteins and fatty acids. Insects are efficient protein converters compared to other animals. However, to do so, they still need a nutrient source to produce proteins from. Because of this conversion cost, it only makes sense to feed insects things that humans and other animals can't eat directly. Black soldier flies are a good way to convert waste streams into nutrients for animal feed. There are some difficulties in their production systems. And here's the question: what is the most difficult challenge we are facing at the moment?
While the larvae of black soldier flies feed on waste streams, gases such as ammonia, nitrogen oxides, and methane are produced. Development of techniques to filter these out of production systems is still an ongoing process, which researchers at WUR are working on.
In most wealthy countries, consumers overconsume proteins and on average get 60 to 70% of their protein from animal sources. For our diets to be more healthy and sustainable, we should eat more plant-based. For example, eat more fruits, more vegetables or more legumes. That also means reducing our intake of animal-based proteins, like meat. Telling people what to eat doesn't work very well. Actually, because most people find it important to exert their food autonomy, their right to choose their own food. Telling people what to eat can even cause a backlash. By making the healthy choice the easy choice, we can support individuals to change their behavior. So by changing the context, by making it easier and cheaper, we can help and support individuals to make the plant-based choices. What percentage of Dutch consumers say they are trying to reduce their meat consumption?
Although 2/3 of consumers say they want to reduce their meat consumption, the actual meat consumption figures haven't gone down. Scientists who study consumption behavior are working hard to understand why.
If you visit a supermarket, you have probably noticed that plant-based burgers are taking up more and more space. Fortunately, their taste and structure continues to become better, and more people are fully enjoying it.
At Wageningen, we're contributing to these improvements by looking at new protein sources and finding ways to incorporate them into a product.
We try to incorporate a fiber structure and make bigger slabs of meat analogues, mimicking your barbecue steaks.
Another approach is to make tasty alternatives that do not mimic meat. This better suits the needs of vegetarians. Traditionally, plant-based burgers contain soy and gluten.
What type of proteins do you think we can already use to replace them?
Legumes, like pea and fava beans, are already used to make plant-based burgers. Microbial proteins are not yet used, except for mycoprotein. Research now focuses on more sustainable processing methods, like using the residues from oil pressing of sunflower seeds.
Look around you. We live in a nice green environment with many grasses and green leaves, if it's not winter. All this green biomass is everywhere, and it's actually a potential protein source. It contains a protein called rubisco that captures CO2 in plants and is the most abundant protein in the world. This is our pilot test facility, where we extract protein from different sources of leaves for food. We are working on new ways of extracting proteins and selection of potential sources. Protein extraction from leaves is not so easy as from, for instance, soybean, which contains much less water. This water in leaves dilutes the protein and needs to be removed. Which type of leaf proteins would you expect to have soonest on your plate?
Extraction of tomato leaf and lettuce root proteins are in the very early phases of research. Extraction of proteins from water lentils is a step further. Studies conducted at WUR have shown that these proteins can be extracted and that water lentils are safe to eat when produced in a controlled environment. The European Food Safety Authority might approve consumption soon. Our vision for Europe in 2050 includes oceanic farms producing food from the sea and integrated pulse and grain production on land. We hope to have rebalanced European diets to get about 1/3 of our protein from animal-sourced foods and 2/3 from plants. And by then, our food system should be fully circular, meaning that nothing is lost or wasted.